I still remember the exact moment I realized someone was watching me. And I don't mean neighbors casually looking through their windows. I mean someone was actually spying on my front porch. One normal Tuesday morning, I stepped outside with my coffee, and my dog suddenly froze, staring at a small decorative plant hanging near my door. At first I thought nothing of it, until I noticed a tiny red light blinking behind the leaves. That was the moment my stomach dropped, because that plant wasn't mine. And what I discovered next completely destroyed an HOA board member's career. If you enjoy real stories where entitled people finally face consequences, make sure you hit like and subscribe right now. Because on Karen Stories Daily, we share stories exactly like this. And trust me, this one gets crazier every minute. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Colorado. Nothing fancy. Just a peaceful street where most people mind their own business. When I bought the house 3 years ago, the HOA seemed normal. Basic rules, lawn maintenance, trash day reminders, nothing unusual. But there was one person everyone warned me about during my first week. Karen. She wasn't actually named Karen, but honestly, she fit the stereotype perfectly. She was on the HOA board, acted like she owned the neighborhood, and somehow always knew what everyone was doing. At first, I ignored it. She would walk slowly past my house, pretending to check flowers while clearly inspecting everything. One time, she knocked on my door to complain that my mailbox color looked slightly off regulation. Another time, she sent me a warning email because my trash bin stayed outside 30 minutes too long. Annoying, but manageable. Things changed. When I renovated my porch, I added a small bench, new lights, and a wooden privacy screen. Everything approved through HOA paperwork. But suddenly Karen started showing up more often. She claimed neighbors complained about suspicious activity, which made no sense because I work from home and barely leave. Then strange things began happening. Packages would be moved slightly. Once, a delivery photo showed my box placed perfectly centered on my welcome mat. Even though delivery drivers never do that, it felt like someone had been standing there after the drop-off. That's when I noticed the plant. When I pulled it down, I realized it wasn't decoration at all. Hidden inside was a tiny wireless camera pointed directly at my door, my seating area, and even part of my living room through the window. My hands were literally shaking. Someone had installed surveillance equipment on my property without permission. I didn't touch it right away. Instead, I grabbed my phone and recorded everything. Close-ups, angles, timestamps. Years working in IT taught me one thing: always document first. I contacted the HOA management company asking if they installed any security devices. Their response came fast. Absolutely not. That meant only one thing: a resident did this. I checked nearby houses and then noticed something else. Across the street, Karen's upstairs window had a receiver antenna pointed directly toward my porch. Suddenly, every weird interaction made sense. She always knew when deliveries arrived. She knew when guests visited. She even mentioned once that I sat outside late at night, something she shouldn't have known. Instead of confronting her, I called the county non-emergency line and asked about surveillance laws. The officer explained that installing a hidden camera on someone else's private property without consent could be a serious violation, especially if it recorded inside living areas. That's when I realized this wasn't HOA drama anymore. This was legal territory. Before taking action, I tested something. I placed tape over the camera lens but left it hanging. Within 2 hours, Karen walked straight to my porch, pretending to check landscaping, and adjusted the plant. She didn't know I was watching from inside. That confirmed everything. I filed an official complaint with the county and submitted my footage. Investigators actually took it seriously. A few days later, an officer visited and collected the device. They traced the signal directly to Karen's home network. The HOA board suddenly scheduled an emergency meeting. Funny enough, Karen tried to control the narrative. She claimed she installed the camera for community safety because packages had been stolen nearby. But the problem was simple. She installed it on my property without permission and aimed it into private space. During the meeting, I stayed calm and said very little. Then the county investigator walked in. You could feel the air leave the room. He explained calmly that unauthorized surveillance could violate privacy laws and possibly criminal statutes depending on recorded footage. Karen's confidence disappeared instantly. She started saying she was only trying to help the neighborhood, but evidence showed continuous recording for weeks. Neighbors were shocked. Many realized she probably monitored them too. The investigation uncovered multiple recordings stored on her system, timestamps, motion alerts, even labeled folders. She had been watching deliveries, visitors, and daily routines. What she called security looked a lot more like obsession. The HOA management company immediately distanced themselves. Their attorney explained the board had no authority to place surveillance devices on private homes. That's when things turned against her fast. Part 2 begins when consequences finally caught up with her. And honestly, even I didn't expect how far it would go. After the county reviewed everything, Karen received an official notice requiring removal of all surveillance equipment and surrender of recorded data. But the bigger shock came when neighbors began filing their own complaints. One couple discovered she had pointed a camera toward their backyard pool area. Another neighbor realized she referenced private gatherings she could only have seen through surveillance. The HOA called another meeting, this time packed with residents. People who never spoke before stood up one after another describing uncomfortable encounters. The board had no choice but to vote on her removal. When the vote passed, the room actually went silent. Karen sat there stunned, realizing the authority she enjoyed for years disappeared in minutes. But it didn't stop there. The county issued fines related to unlawful surveillance, and she was ordered to complete privacy compliance training. The HOA also updated bylaws clearly banning any resident installed monitoring devices facing another property. For the first time since moving in, the neighborhood felt peaceful. No warning letters, no surprise inspections. Just normal life. A few weeks later, neighbors started talking more, hanging outside again. Turns out many people had been stressed by her constant monitoring, but never spoke up. Once someone finally challenged it, everything changed. Looking back, I realized the biggest mistake she made wasn't installing the camera. It was believing no one would question her authority. If there's one lesson here, it's that HOA rules don't override basic rights. Documentation, patience, and staying calm made all the difference. And honestly, sharing stories like this is exactly why Karen's stories daily exist, because sometimes the quietest person on the street ends up standing up for everyone. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a neighbor cross the line like this? Or deal with an HOA that went too far? Drop your story in the comments because I read them all, and your experience might inspire the next video. And if you think more people should hear how this ended, share this video with a friend. You never know who might need to see it. Asterisk. After that meeting, I honestly thought the situation was over. Karen had been removed from the HOA board, the camera was gone, and neighbors finally felt comfortable again. But about a week later, I received a certified letter that made me realize the story wasn't finished yet. It wasn't from Karen. It was from the HOA's legal department. My first reaction was panic. For a second, I wondered if somehow this was turning back on me. But when I opened the envelope, the tone surprised me completely. The letter explained the association was conducting an internal review because Karen had acted while representing the HOA, even though she didn't have authority to install surveillance equipment. Basically, they were worried about liability. Their attorney wanted a formal statement from me, describing everything that happened from the beginning. That's when I understood something important. The HOA itself was now trying to protect the neighborhood from a lawsuit. I agreed to cooperate, but I made sure everything stayed documented. I wrote a clear timeline when the camera appeared, how I discovered it, my communication with management, and how county officials confirmed the device traced back to Karen's home network. I kept emotions out and stuck only to facts. That turned out to be one of the smartest decisions I made. A few days later, something unexpected happened. 3 neighbors knocked on my door together. They looked nervous at first, but then one of them admitted they wanted to thank me. Apparently, Karen had been sending warning notices to multiple homeowners for years. Things like unauthorized gatherings or noise complaints that never actually happened. People had been quietly paying fines just to avoid conflict. Once the investigation exposed her surveillance, everyone realized how she always seemed to know too much. One neighbor told me she stopped letting her kids play in the front yard because Karen once described their schedule almost perfectly. Hearing that honestly made me feel angry in a way I hadn't before. This wasn't just annoying behavior. People had felt watched inside their own homes. Around that time, rumors started spreading that Karen planned to sue the HOA for removing her from the board. At first I laughed it off, but then an HOA representative actually confirmed she had contacted an attorney. That's when tension returned to the neighborhood. Nobody wanted another legal battle. The HOA scheduled a public transparency meeting, something they had never done before. Residents filled the clubhouse, standing along the walls because seats ran out. The new board president opened by apologizing for what happened and explained new policies. No board member could conduct independent investigations. No surveillance allowed without written community approval, and all complaints must go through Management, not individuals. Then Karen walked in. You could feel every conversation stop. She sat quietly in the back, arms crossed, clearly upset. When the open comment period started, she stood up and claimed she was only trying to protect property values. But this time, nobody stayed silent. A retired police officer calmly explained that safety never justifies illegal monitoring. Another resident said trust mattered more than control. For the first time, Karen didn't argue back. She just sat down. A week later, the county finalized their findings. Because recordings captured portions of private living space through windows, the violation was considered serious. She avoided criminal charges but received significant fines and a formal warning that future incidents could escalate legally. She was also required to permanently delete all stored footage under supervision. That day felt like the real ending. Not revenge, just accountability. Months passed, and something interesting happened. Without constant enforcement letters, neighbors started improving their homes voluntarily. People talked more. Barbecues returned. The strange tension that once hovered over the street disappeared completely. One evening while walking my dog, a neighbor joked that the neighborhood finally felt like a community, instead of a surveillance zone. And honestly, that summed it up perfectly. I also learned something personal through all this. At the beginning, I wanted to confront Karen immediately. I wanted to knock on her door and demand answers, but staying calm, documenting everything, and letting proper authorities handle it protected me and everyone else. Sometimes patience is stronger than confrontation. The HOA later sent an official notice confirming policy changes were permanently added to bylaws. They even invited residents to participate in future decisions, something that never happened before. Ironically, Karen's actions forced the HOA to become more transparent than ever. I never spoke directly to her again. She eventually put her house up for sale, and within a few months, she moved away quietly. No drama, no goodbye meeting, just gone. The new family that moved and had no idea about the history. And honestly, that felt like the healthiest outcome. Now when I sit on my porch in the evenings, it actually feels relaxing again. No strange feeling of being watched, no unnecessary inspections, just normal neighborhood sounds. And every time I look at that spot where the hidden camera once hung, I'm reminded how important it is to stand up calmly when boundaries are crossed. Stories like this are exactly why I share experiences here on Karen Stories Daily, because a lot of people think they're powerless against HOA authority when in reality, the law still matters and respect goes both ways. Before we wrap up, I really want to hear your opinion. If you discovered a hidden camera on your property, what would you have done first? Would you confront the person immediately or handle it legally like I did? Tell me in the comments because your perspective makes these conversations better. And if this story kept you watching until the end, share it with someone who loves satisfying real-life justice stories. You never know who might relate to it. ***.